There goes. All right. Well, wonderful. Well, thank you all. I'm excited to be back for another one of these talks. When we were talking about as a team, kind of what we see as one of the hardest processes once you've gone through assessment and everything is really how do you figure out which technology to place with individuals? And obviously a lot of you guys have your SMEs right now to help you kind of figure out, hey, is this the appropriate technology? Or to maybe kick in additional ideas that you might not even just be aware of what are out there. So when we were talking about as a team what could be a beneficial workshop, we kind of landed on, how to search for technology solutions on your own. And really the goal of being, as we get further into this grant, us as SMEs, we want to see you guys starting to kick out ideas on your own more and more and more as we go through this. And so I wanted to impart some of the tools that I actually personally use in searching for technology, because while I've been in this space doing this for many, many years, as Megan, you noticed yesterday when you found a technology I wasn't even aware of existing. Technology just changes so fast that I like to make sure that I'm always searching to see if there are alternatives, if there are other options. So I don't just get stuck on the technology I know. I'm always looking at what's continuing to be out there. So the idea of this workshop today is talking about those tools that I use, primarily AI and like Google searching, how that works. And then hopefully imparting some knowledge on you all so you feel confident to use those tools moving forward. So there we go. So I'm going to cover really 4 main things. So using AI to search for tech is one of the big ones. And then I actually have a really, really cool AI tool that I always like to highlight and show people. It's not necessarily just searching for technology, but it's also what I see as a nice tool for getting comfortable with AI. I think a lot of people have a strong apprehension about AI, which is understandable. It's a new tool. It's a new way of doing things. And if you don't know how to communicate with it or how to look for falsities in it, essentially, it can be really overwhelming. So hopefully by introducing this tool, you guys can kind of get your feet wet with a tool that's designed to be very, very comfortable and easy to use. And also I think that there's a multi-factor where it can be useful for you all in the work you do, but also might be something that you can share with individuals that you support as a tool that might be beneficial for them as well. In addition, talking about keywords for web search, pretty straightforward, but I'll give you a list of some of the common keywords that I use. And then lastly, just stressing kind of what it looks like to work with vendors and why that's important. So yeah, here's my hello page. Like I said, I'm pretty excited to talk about all of this, and I'm going to do live demonstrations. This is primarily not going to be on PowerPoint. I put together a slide deck so you guys have it for reference and can come back to it and find the links that I'm going to. But this is really more a demonstration. So I am going to demonstrate ChatGPT. Some of the main things that I want to stress, if you guys are using ChatGPT, Gemini, any of the AI tools that you might be already using or might be familiar with, it doesn't have to be ChatGPT. That's the one that I'm comfortable with. I like that. I used to use Gemini back when it was Bard. I just found that ChatGPT ended up getting more advanced where it worked in the field of assistive tech and remote support a little bit better and doing some of those filtered searches. So that's why I prefer this one. But first and foremost, how you talk to AI is important. It's actually the key to making sure that what you're searching can yield appropriate results. I'll show you all of that. But in addition, reviewing the AI responses to verify that things are correct. And I'll show you kind of how I do that. But primarily, like if I ask it for a list of recommended technology to meet a desired outcome or a goal for an individual, and it kicks out a lot of technology I'm not familiar with, I'll actually then do a double search where I'm pulling that technology and I'm Googling what that technology is. Sometimes there's technology that exists elsewhere in the world that isn't even available in the US, and those can come up in searches. So we don't want to accidentally be recommending or suggesting technology we can't get a hold of. Or on the flip side, right, AI gets things wrong sometimes. So we also want to be filtering to make sure that when we asked for a tool for low vision, it didn't confuse that and was giving us like swim goggles or something, right? Like where it's just giving the wrong information. And then giving AI feedback is key. And I'm going to show you how I do that as well. AI learns from you. And when you've created an account, it's really, really wonderful because it actually starts to learn how you talk, what your style of communication is. If you're asking it to clean up your emails and things like that, it'll still do it in your voice, which is really nice. So if you give AI feedback, it learns about the work you're doing and can work better to make sure that as it searches in the future for you, or as it makes edits or changes for you, it's specifying it more and more to you and your role and the work you're doing. And then lastly, don't give up. Sometimes AI can be scary. It can be overwhelming. Sometimes when you start, right, you get that wrong search, and that can be really, really intimidating because it feels like more work. But I promise, having worked without ChatGPT and having worked with ChatGPT, it makes a huge difference. I really, 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 I feel like I've been able to maximize my work so much more utilizing AI. So with that being said, I am going to pop into our first demo. Are you guys seeing the ChatGPT screen now? All right, wonderful. So very first, I came in, so this would be if you just Google search ChatGPT. Let's say you did that. So now I'm going to open up introducing ChatGPT. And mind you, I logged out of mine so that you guys wouldn't like just see what it looks like once you've come in. I want you to know how to sign up for this. And it is a free option. You can certainly sign up to do this for free. You can also do a paid version. The free version is fantastic. A lot of people will say, no, you need to get the paid one. The paid one is better. It will learn you faster. It will learn with you, but it's honestly not necessary. I use a free version. I've used a free version for a long time, and it has still learned what I do. So I don't know. I'm sorry, I was talking and then I clicked on things. Click on this Try ChatGPT button. That'll bring you to the ChatGPT page. Here you're going to click Sign Up. And I'm just going to, I don't believe I have an account with my Simply Home email address. Actually, I think, hold on, I might. Well, you enter your email address. I'm going to click Continue with Google because that's always just a little bit easier. And then creating your account. So straightforward. It's going to ask a little bit about you. So give your full name. You guys are going to see my birthday. So I expect you all to wish me happy birthday next year, or this year, I guess. And now you're brought right into this. So you can ask ChatGPT anything. If you want to have a pretend conversation with an AI, that's how a lot of people get their feet wet with it. They'll start just asking questions like, hey, how is your day? How is your day? What's the weather like in Florida? Because it's crazy weather right now. So that's a fun question to ask. But for the sake of today's training, I wanted to pose the question to you all. What is a technology you guys are trying to search for right now, or a goal that you're trying to meet a technology need for? And don't everybody ask all at once or offer up recommendations all at once.
Maybe some technology for visual or hearing impaired.
I love it. All right. All right. So I threw in specifically what assistive technology can you recommend to support someone who is visually impaired? So I'm going to search that. That's obviously a long-winded answer or a long form answer or question. And you can see it is kicking out awesome recommendations. I already recognize most of this. These are all really, really fantastic options. And it's a lot. So you could sort through many, many different options that it's recommending for you. This already is a more robust list than if I just Googled this. Googling it, you're going to have to parse through all of this. You're going to have to figure this out. What I love about ChatGPT is it breaks it out into suggestions and areas. So as you can see here, it recommended screen readers. And not only did it just say broadly, oh, screen readers would be a good technology, but it recommended some that are some of the top used screen readers and top reported screen readers that have high functionality for somebody who would need a screen reader as an option because they can't visually see the screen. This is where, again, you could copy and paste this into a Google search and say, you know what, I don't know what JAWS is. I want to search what that is. I want to search what NVDA is, or VoiceOver, or any of these. Like I said, I know I recognize most of these, so I can confirm personally that this is a verified list. But if there's anything on here that I flag that I'm not sure about, then I would look at it. So refreshable Braille displays, maybe this is something that you're not familiar with. So this actually gave you an example of what this is. So these devices translate text from a computer or mobile screen into Braille characters, allowing tactile reading. So maybe that doesn't make as much sense to me. I'm not just really super sure what that is. So now I'm going to just go off ChatGPT, look that up. What is a refreshable Braille display? Oh, okay, cool. Now I'm seeing it. Maybe I want to pull up videos. Or maybe, and keep in mind, your searches stay in place when you do this. So now I'm coming down, I'm going to run another search. What is I copied and pasted that. Can you share some examples or recommend some videos to watch to learn more? So I actually, when I say like giving it feedback, talking with it, I talk to it as if it is somebody that I'm in a room with who's teaching me about these things, right? I'm going to ask follow-up questions if I don't understand something that it shared with me. I'm going to ask it to provide it in a way that makes sense for me, right? Asking it to share video options or things like that. It really does learn from you as you go, but treat it like something that you need to teach too at the same time, which I know is confusing. And that's, I think, where people get a little overwhelmed. But it really does work super, super favorably as you go through it and learn from it. So this one's obviously a little bit more complicated. Whenever it moves nice and slow like this, I know that it's really thinking, it's really doing some research. So this is probably not a question that's asked very often to ChatGPT, where this one kicked out all of this information super fast, meaning that this is probably actually searched pretty regularly. For me, when I see that it's taking its time answering a question, that also gives me pause to think that I might need to do a double check to see if what it's recommending is correct. Again, in this one, I actually do recognize some of these devices that it's suggesting, so I don't have to do as much research right now in front of you all, but that would be a good flag. So here's an answer that it gave. A refreshable Braille display is an assistive device that translates digital text from a computer, smartphone, or tablet into Braille characters. It uses a series of tiny movable pins that rise and fall to form Braille letters and numbers. This allows visually impaired users to read digital content through touch. These displays are often used alongside screen readers, enabling users to interact with software, websites, or documents in a tactile form. So as you can imagine, these devices, obviously, they only work really well for people who can read Braille, but they're fantastic. I have done a lot of support for people who are both visually impaired and hearing impaired. And if somebody can read Braille, now you have given them the access to the internet, where a lot of people don't have that if they are both visually impaired and hearing impaired. So they can't use screen reading software. This gives them an alternative option so that they can still engage with that screen. Maybe without this search, you never would have known that. So that's where ChatGPT can truly pull up different ideas, different examples of things that maybe you have never learned about, you didn't even know existed. This is how I find out about new things all the time. And then, as I had asked in my request, I asked it for some videos that would show me, hey, what does this look like? So I want to do the one from Freedom Scientific. I'm going to click on the link. Of course, that one's not available anymore. Let's try some of these. And sometimes you do get this where it gives, I think this might just be something where you try this. It might just not be the proper link, but if you actually search it. So don't give up. This is the whole follow through on things. Yes. So if I search that and then get the video that it was recommending. And this is where my next point, of giving it feedback. I tried clicking on the recommended video links and all of them say they do not exist any longer. When I searched for the videos independently, they popped up. So I'm just giving that some information. That's so that the AI can learn from me. You guys don't have to do that. I like to do that. I want it to be something that it learns as I learn. So that's where I come from. Any questions on this right now? I know this is a lot. This is more just like how to communicate with it, how to talk with it, how to parse through all of the information it's sharing with you. What are your guys' thoughts, questions, feelings on this at this point? Thank you, Megan. I like the hand claps.
I started using the Chat GBT a little while back, and it has been a game changer for many things.
I love it.
Many things. I'm like, where has this been? Wow.
Right. One of the big things, like if you're not going to just use it for AT, ET, and like remote support searches, which I use this for everything.
Right.
Almost every email. If I write a long form email, one, people don't like receiving long blocks of text, right? So I will bring my emails into ChatGPT. This is just a fun tip. I'll bring them into ChatGPT and say almost always, if I pulled up my personal account, you would see, hey, can you simplify this message and make sure it sounds friendly? And then it will kick back a cleaned up version of my word vomit. So it's actually saved me so much time, because instead of really formatting emails, or maybe I'm writing a paper or putting together slide points like slide decks, and I want to simplify something like that, I can ask it to help me with wording things properly. Hey, can you make this list a little bit easier to understand? Can you clean this up so it's readable? It's just truly amazing. So yes, I love that you're using it, Trish, because I think it's a game changer.
Absolutely.
One thing, and you touched on it by going into that one specific topic after seeing that long list. But sometimes you do put in a prompt or a question that generates just a lot of info, and I think this is an example of one, right? Mm-hmm. And so you scroll through and you see those bolded topics, and you realize, oh, it's including Braille in this. So let me refine what I asked.
Yes.
Not necessarily dig into one specific topic, but just go back to my initial prompt and word it to exclude something like Braille. Just a little more descriptive about the person's sightedness. That would include, would allow ChatGPT to say, oh, they don't actually need a Braille reader, and you can kind of pare down that initial list by just being more specific. But it's always good, in my experience, to start general and use the results from ChatGPT to help you become more specific. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like you're asking, again, you're conversing with someone like it's a person. But if I asked Alaina, how do I get from my house to Center City, Philadelphia? But I didn't tell her that I'm riding my bike, or I didn't tell her that I have a car, or I didn't tell her that there's a parade going on, right? She might give me 5 different ways to get down there, and I would say, oh, I'm biking. And that helps her give a more specific answer. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's sort of, yeah.
That's a really excellent tip. And so I actually just copied and pasted my first question and then gave it a little bit more information. So I have the person is able to hear, so do not include Braille. They can see a little, but text needs to be very large, so they sometimes have a hard time reading labels, signs, books, etc. Because now it's going to likely kick out recommendations for tools that can help with some of those things that I highlighted as issues as well. So magnification tools is the very first one it pulls from, right? So yes, 100% narrowing it down, starting broad, seeing what it kicks out, or sometimes I ask it incredibly specific information, right? Like if I know exactly what I'm looking for, I have actually, and Megan is one of the people that I work with for this project. I've sometimes taken things from one of the assessments and said, hey, here is an identified need. What are some recommendations that you have? Or if I'm giving feedback and I'm saying, hey, Megan, I feel like something is missing. Sometimes I can say, how would you explain what's missing here? This is what I'm thinking. And it can clean it up into like a easier to explain format, right? So Megan's been like the recipient of many a ChatGPT filtered response.
A good moment here to interject though. Make sure you're de-identifying anything that you put in here, right? So if you ask somebody a question during an assessment and you got a specific response from them, it's okay to put the question and the response in. But you're not just taking an assessment, and
yes,
this should be obvious to everybody, but you're not just taking an assessment that might include the person's name, their date of birth, any identifying PHI factors, and putting it in at all.
Yeah, you do have the ability to upload documents and have it look through them. I don't use that feature yet. I need to play around with it. It's a newer feature for the free version. And so I like to wait a little bit on some of the AI stuff until it's been more sorted, because exactly what Paul is saying, sometimes there's privacy issues, sometimes there's privacy concerns, and it's gaining access to that information, and it can use that information in its learning process itself. So I also don't want to unintentionally feed it bad information where it thinks it's learning something and then will give a false recommendation to somebody else who runs a similar search later. So being very, very mindful of what you're putting in, de-identifying information, not sharing anything that's like incredibly personal to you either, where you might now have your information shared. There are some definite safety guards that you should be considering. Yes, Brittany. And we can't hear you. I don't know if you are unmuted or Brittany, did you raise your hand on accident? No, I see that you're unmuted. Maybe. Okay. Well, if you are trying to say something, we can't hear you, so maybe submit it through the chat. And Paul, can you keep an eye on that? Thank you. All right. Any other questions or thoughts on just this very, okay. Oh, perfect. Okay, we'll wait a little bit for Brittany, but do any of you all have other questions, thoughts, ideas, recommendations, or anything like that for ChatGPT before we answer Brittany's question and then move on to the next tool?
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yay. Okay. Sorry. I don't know. I've never had that issue before with my other headset. But anyways, yeah, so I wanted to add, since we were talking about GPT, this might be a little off topic, but just a personal way that I use that. And I come from the provider side. So as I was using it, I was like, well, I think I'm going to share that because I think that a lot of our members could potentially use it in this way as well. But I actually use it for doing like meal planning for the week and budgeting. So I've actually asked it, to create a meal plan for me, that is, gluten-free, high protein. Like you can add some of those specifics in there within, say a budget of $100 at Aldi's, and it will create, a grocery list with a meal plan and all that good stuff. So I might be late to the party on that. So if you guys talked about that, but anyways, I kind of just started using it in that way, and was talking to some of my provider friends about technology, and I was like, wow, I could see where this could be very useful to some of our members who have a very limited income and some very specific diet restrictions and things. So anyways, it was a little random, but I just wanted to share that with the group, because I know we have some providers on here that that might find some use in that.
That is absolutely fantastic and such a great use. Also, I swear it seems like we put you here to key up for the next tool that I'm going to show. Yeah, like,
Good deal.
that you said that specifically too. Paul, were you going to add anything?
I was just, since we're sharing, so I was just going to hold up. So I did a similar thing for a workout plan. And I'm a former personal trainer, so I know some stuff about this stuff. And I put in specific goals and specific attributes about myself and the number of days of working. This is very similar to what Brittany's saying, just on a different topic, and got actually a really solid full workout plan in the matter of 2 minutes. So
it's really incredible. My sister started doing Pilates reformer work over the holidays, and they actually use ChatGPT to teach them how to use a Pilates reformer. So it is pretty incredible, and put together like a I'm a newbie list of recommendations for how to use it and exercises. So it is really cool what you can do with it. So any other questions on ChatGPT specifically before I transition into the tool that Brittany really geared me up for? All right, well, let me get my screen sharing happening again. Sorry, I pulled it off so you could see what Paul was holding up. So moving on into the next one then, very specifically, I just want to show you my cute little slide because I like their little logo. But I'm going to show you an AI-driven tool called Goblin.tools. And this is probably one of my favorite things that I've found in the AI space. So let me expand these things so they don't throw anything off. But this is a tool that, from what has been shared with me, was developed by people with disabilities for people with disabilities. The fun story of how I discovered this is that some of you may have heard me speak on this before, but I sometimes can misread tone. And I think if people are sending me like lots of periods in their emails and things like that, I think people are mad at me. And I have a friend who is on the spectrum, and he was using this pretty religiously. And he sent it to me. He was like, hey, I think this will really be beneficial for you because you can run it through. This is specifically the judge that I'm talking about. You can take text, run it through, and ask the judge to read the tone of it for you and how text might be coming across. And it can save a lot of people's butts, but this can be an excellent tool for people that you might be supporting, or yourselves if you're anything like me, who might not be able to understand, right? Like the way this person talks versus that person talks. And that might cause confusion because they might think that, oh, if everybody says this way, then that means that they're happy. Whereas somebody saying it that way might mean that they're angry. So sometimes finding those nuances and things like that can be more difficult. The judge can be a really excellent tool for that. So this is not the one that, like, this isn't the part of this tool that I was saying that Brittany queued me up for, but this is how I got introduced to this tool, and I think it's absolutely amazing. If anybody wants to throw in like an example chunk of text that you want me to run through the judge so you can see how this works, how it comes out the other side, I'd be happy to do it. But since there's a lot for me to cover and we've got a little bit of time, Paul will keep an eye out if you want to send a chunk and we can test it. Otherwise, I'm going to go through all of these different tabs. And I'm going to go backwards because Brittany was specifically talking about meal planning. So this is basically a very simplified concept of what Brittany was saying for, again, developed for somebody with disabilities to do this themselves. But I have used this tool to plan for my own meals and things like that. As you can see, so you can write down what ingredients you have. You can write down dietary constraints, serving sizes, equipment, time, anything that you want the chef to take into account to recommend what you should be cooking. So this isn't necessarily the meal planning prep that Brittany had recommended, but maybe it comes down to that person is trying to learn how to cook for themselves for the first time. And where it might be easy for me to look in my kitchen and say, well, I've got peanut butter, I've got bread, and I've got jelly. I can make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. That might not be as easy for somebody to jump from brand new to making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So they could put in their ingredients and it could recommend what they should cook with I loved, Brittany, specifically mentioning the dietary constraints, because that can make it very hard for people, or budget or things like that. And being able to include that in this is very, very key. So it was just really fun that you said that. I always joke that when I'm going to show you all the rest of these, this chef one is hilarious to me, because it's very, very different from every one of these other tools. All of these other tools are very connected with each other. And then they threw in the chef, which I just think is amazing. So, all right. So I'm going to go back to the beginning now. So their first primary tool that they created was the magic to-do list. So this is where you break things down into simplified tasks. So that is one of the things that can be very complex for some people to understand. I use the example of making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. If I like the explain it like I'm five concept. If you gave your instruction sheet to a 5-year-old, could they make that peanut butter and jelly sandwich on their own? And that concept of how do you break down steps in a very simplified way where people can truly, genuinely follow it, and there's not that mishap. One of my favorite videos out there is a 5-year-old who wrote a to-do list for his dad, and the dad followed it exactly. And it says, put the knife in the peanut butter. So the dad drops the knife handle side down into the peanut butter, and the son is just flabbergasted. And it's just like, to me, it's such a primary example of, if you don't break things down into simplified steps, some people, it doesn't land the same way as it does for us. So does anybody have an example of something that you'd want me to generate a broken down list of simplified tasks? I obviously, these are all ones that people have given me when I've demonstrated this in the past.
Brushing your teeth. Or is that too simple?
No, that's great. That seems simple, right? But that's a complex one, actually. So what I do is I just generated brushing my teeth. Now I'm going to come over here and wave my magic wand, and it's going to break this down into simple steps. So as you can see, what you just said might be a simple task, because to us it's right. Get your toothbrush, put on toothpaste, water, brush. This gives more of a step-by-step. So gather your toothbrush, toothpaste, and a glass of water. So you've now gotten the items you need. Rinse your toothbrush with water. Apply a small amount onto the bristles of the toothbrush, right? Because you don't want that person to put it on the handle. Place the toothbrush against your teeth at a slight angle. So you can see it's really guiding more specifically. And what I love even more is maybe this, right? Gathering your toothbrush, toothpaste, and a glass of water. That's a broad statement for some people. Now I can wave my magic wand on that and get that even more. I can break these steps down. Sometimes it doesn't go down further. Sometimes you'd have to like use this to then generate your own steps for that person. But it's a way to really get those detailed specifics. So gather your toothbrush. This is now telling me how I might be able to do that. So just a really cool, like I said, magic to do. You can also do something called estimate, where now I'm going to run a time estimator to see how long this task should take me. And it'll actually break out the estimate on each one of these tasks. Now, the thing that I've learned with the estimator, it's not always the best. And I'm going to show you the example on that. It's running in the background right now. Usually it takes a little bit of time. Let me make sure that I actually clicked it. There we go. But as you can come see down here, I broke this making macaroni and cheese cups down into multiple of those like re-simplified steps. So it adds time every time I do that. So it shouldn't take somebody 2 hours and 6 minutes to make a macaroni and cheese cup. But when I really broke it down into each individual step, down, 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 it added some time. So as you can see with this one, it's telling me right now that brushing my teeth might take 14 minutes and 10 seconds with the addition of 5 minutes and 10 seconds in my gathering toothbrush stage, since I broke it down into more simplified tasks. And that's not unreasonable. That might take somebody that much time to be able to do this on their own. But now they've got a step-by-step guide of how to do that. So this is, again, this isn't necessarily AI in the way that ChatGPT is doing it, but it's taking AI to take something complex and make it simplified. And this can be done for your guys' tasks. Maybe in your assessment planning, you want to start planning something, you want to have a conversation. How do I talk to somebody about X? Ask it. I mean, see if it can break it down into all the different questions you should be asking, right? All right, so moving on to the formalizer. The formalizer, I love this, is turning the chaotic thoughts into classy ones or vice versa. So you can enter text here. And then this I love. You can go make my text. And then I love like less snarky is my favorite. But you can run it through this and it'll kick out a converted text that fits this tone. Paul, did you have something to add? I saw you unmute for a second there. Okay. So this is, instead of where I showed you, ChatGPT, you are telling it what to do. You're giving it commands. This is simplified. You're now saying, run it through this. So when I said I take emails and I say, hey, can you make this easier to read? Or can you break this down and make it less complicated? This might be easier, more informal, more sociable, more to the point, right? This is a simple way to do that. So I already showed you the judge, the way that I got introduced to this. The professor, this one's just really fun. This can be, maybe you want to run a crash course on those Braille devices. You could ask it to run a crash course for you on there. I always use the example of the Titanic. Explain what the Titanic is. It gives an explanation and an example. And what I love about this is you guys might be supporting people who are really curious folks. And right now, maybe they couldn't just get on the computer and easily Google stuff. But if you gave them this, you put them in front of the crash course, you maybe they can't read the screen, so you've got a screen reader. Now somebody can control and ask this over and over again, different questions that they're curious about and learn. You can use a microphone to ask questions, so you don't have to type or anything like that. And it's really fun. So look at this, the way it describes it, right? It's, like I said, this was built by people with disabilities for people with disabilities. So now they're to describe it. Imagine you're at a big party and everyone is having a good time. Suddenly someone spills a drink on the host's favorite rug, and now all the guests are worried about how the host will react. As they gather around to make small talk and cheer each other up, they overlook the mess and focus on enjoying the night together, even joking about how they'll need to buy the host a new rug. I do not know, actually, that is a very bad example. I do not know how that relates to the Titanic at all, but I didn't read their crash course on that. So who knows? Ignore that example, please. I love that that was live. So that's where AI can give you bad feedback sometime too. Unless any of you guys are like, yep, that landed. That's the Titanic to me. So moving on. So the consultant, this is weighing out what are the pros and cons. I love this one because that can be hard for any of us, right? The example somebody gave during this was getting a second dog. And the best part is it gives you the pro and cons list, and then it gives you some final advice. And a lot of times it's not necessarily saying, yes, do this. It's saying, weighing your pros and cons, these are the things that you should finally think about. So this can be just a really nice tool for somebody. Estimator, this is just telling me how long it's probably going to take. So like I said, I ran that on the Magic To Do. This is just on its own, being able to plan out timing. The compiler is a brain dump. Like I just word vomit into this, and then I ask it to build out a list of tasks for me. So it can be really beneficial in that. And then I showed you guys the chef because I thought that was so fun. Like I said, isn't that funny that the chef exists on this when all the rest of that stuff kind of relates? And then the chef just tagged on, which I just love because it's amazing. But any questions on this tool or ideas or thoughts around this at all? All righty. Well, like I said, I wanted to show this to you guys because I think that it's a really good way to introduce AI. So if you're not as comfortable going straight to ChatGPT, play around with this. It's got more parameters. It's a little bit more straightforward. It guides you through what you're doing, when you're doing it, how you're doing it. But also consider this tool for the people you support. It's just a really cool AI tool that can make planning easier for people, make interacting, make learning, make all of that easier. And I always recommend it for somebody who's seeking employment or in employment, but also people who just want to be more independent. It's just an excellent tool. So, all right, getting back on track then with our next slide, which is our keywords. So this, you'll see, I just kind of have the same concepts repeated over and over again. But if you're Google searching for a specific item, sometimes it pops up right away, and that's amazing. But sometimes if you add these keywords or keywords similar to this onto your Google search, it's going to yield those results a lot faster and a lot better. A lot of times, if you just straight up Google it, you're not going through ChatGPT with some of these keywords added. You'll actually find a lot of like stores that sell those devices, which is kind of cool because then you can actually see pictures of the devices. Sometimes they have videos, sometimes they have stories, and you can kind of get the feel for, is that the right device based on my search? So I don't necessarily need to go into these. This is just a list that you guys will then have available to you for adding onto your searches as you're looking through things. And I add assistive, enabling, and adapted to like really any of these searches. But also just one of the things that I wanted to highlight is, very specifically, what I found is we use the terminology remote support. That is the appropriate terminology. That's what we want to call it. However, Google thinks of remote support as IT work from like, hey, my computer's not working. Fix it for me over the phone. So if you search remote support tools, it's going to yield different examples. I have found in Googling, and even with ChatGPT, I had to teach it what remote support meant when I said remote support. And it learned, and now it only responds to remote support within the field that I work within. But if you're just getting started and kind of working out, like Google searching, use remote monitoring. Unfortunately, I know we try to avoid that, but that's the most recognized. And you might even want to add remote monitoring in a disability service space, tools for remote monitoring with disabilities, things like that. That can help you actually find some of those remote support specific tools. So I just wanted to highlight that one because that one's a little counterintuitive to what is taught in Shift and what we talk about when we say remote support. Any questions on this or any additions anybody wants to share? All righty. So then lastly, and this is where I asked Paul to share the correct, I just took the link out to make sure that you guys get the correct one. We've talked about this a few times, involving the vendors early and talking with them regularly is really, really crucial. You might not have even fully identified which technology or which vendor you want to go with. But if you know and understand like, hey, this vendor has a tool that I think will address this desired outcome or goal, then reach out to them, talk with them, see if it's the appropriate tool. We created the vendor matrix. I know Paul has covered this a few times. We've shared it out a few times, but we wanted to re-highlight it. It's a tool that is available to you through this grant pilot. It's for all of the vendors who you've seen, you've engaged with, they're part of this pilot. It's not limited. We've said that many times. It's not just limited to those vendors. So if you find other vendors, reach out to them. Ask them to engage in conversations with you about what goals you're trying to identify, more information about the individual you're trying to support with the technology solution. Talk with them early, talk with them often. And remember, some vendors can actually even help with assessments specific for their services, especially if you're looking at remote support. Very, very, very much so lean into your remote support vendor that you're highlighting, because they will want to do their own assessment to determine which equipment is appropriate and help in planning that care plan. Also, many, many times, if you're working with families or guardians or individuals, and there are a lot of questions about the technology, how it works, how does it function, what does it do when, those vendors answer those questions all day long. And so they're the experts at being able to help address those concerns, help address maybe pushback, all of that. So please, please, please involve vendors. Don't forget about them. It's harder when you're doing like off-the-shelf technologies and things like that. But sometimes even then, if you find an off-the-shelf technology that you know comes from a specific vendor, reach out to them and ask questions if you have them. Any questions on that at all, or anything you want to add, Paul, for that section?
No, I sent you the updated link, Alaina, so if you want to add that link into the
yes, I will add it right in here so you guys have that and can access that. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to add the link into the big part of the vendor matrix, so it's really obvious and really easy to click on and find. Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but that vendor matrix will also have contact information to those vendors so you know how to reach out to them. Is that correct?
So there's a link to the website.
Okay.
I don't recall if we went so far as to put a name with them.
Okay, no worries.
But there's a link to the website for each vendor.
Yes. And if you're having a hard time, reach out to your SME too. If you're like not able to find how to get a hold of any of those vendors, we obviously have direct contacts that we've been communicating with for this grant as well. But use that. Paul has highlighted and taken the videos from some of those vendors when they've presented in these talks, and even attached that to some of them so that you can even see their videos highlighting what their services do in case you don't remember. All righty. Well, thank you so much. And as per usual, here's my contact information in case anybody has follow-up questions for me. If you just want to share your amazing stories about how you've used AI, or if you start using Goblin tools for yourself or with somebody you support, I love to hear about it. I love to share those stories with other people then, so please don't hesitate to reach out.
Hey, I was going to tell you that, sorry, this is Trish, on the vendor list, on the second tab, there is vendor contacts. So it gives you an email address for them.
Perfect. Thank you. I honestly, I knew we had that internally, but then I panicked and wasn't sure if we had shared that externally or not.
Yes, that's on the same document where you just click on the links.
Perfect. Perfect.
Thank you so much, Alaina. Excellent presentation as always. I'm going to just quickly share my screen one more time, let you know what's coming up in the speaker series. So next week, Constance from Shift is going to be doing a presentation on effectively using the screening matrix. So one of the new things that we are requiring is a screening matrix. For a couple reasons. It's important that you are casting a wide net across your beneficiaries to see who could benefit most from technology, and the screening matrix helps you do that. Constance is going to sort of revive some of the information you learned during your ETIS training about how to effectively use the screening matrix and answer any of your questions. So that'll be a good session. Make sure you're here for that. And then future session, not exactly sure if it's going to be the first one in February, but using the accessibility features on a smartphone. So we see a lot of assessments coming through where, you know, the box is checked, the person uses a smartphone. And we think that's an opportunity for you to ask a few more questions about how effectively they use that smartphone, because I'm an iPhone user myself. I'm not endorsing any particular brand, but the accessibility features are phenomenal. And I think a lot of folks walk around with the iPhone in their pocket without actually knowing what's built into it from an accessibility standpoint. So Alice Bruhard, who's worked on the Tennessee project previously, is going to do a presentation on the features of the smartphone and accessibility. So I think that's going to be great because you can share that information with your beneficiaries as you go along.
Paul, did you share out that webinar too that the Minnesota Federally Assistive Technology Program is hosting in February for specifically Apple products?
I intended to. I may have.
Okay.
You want to talk about it real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. So coming up in, I'm going to pull up the date real quick. Give me just a second here. But I believe that it is February. Yep, February 12th. It's called Empowering Accessibility, Personalizing Apple Devices for Diverse Needs. It is a webinar specifically where it's hosted in Minnesota, but it's through their Federal Assistive Technology Program. And they invited an Apple expert on accessibility to come do this talk. It's actually an hour and a half. So you can attend it as needed. But I will say, having seen some presentations by Apple on their accessibility features, it is genuinely mind-blowing. And it takes a lot to really, really blow my mind these days in this field. And it blew my absolute mind when I learned about all of the accessibility features that are free built into the iPhone, where I've been recommending $1,000 devices to do exactly what the iPhone and the tablets and things like that can do for free. So I'd highly recommend attending this webinar if you have the opportunity. I would also still attend the one that we're hosting because she has a lived experience that she's going to talk about, and she's going to talk about more than just the iPhone and everything. But that'll be, Paul will share out the how to register for that, but it should be really cool. I'm really excited about that webinar.
Yeah, and that brings me up to my closing comment. I'm reviving, although it may not be weekly, I'm reviving the newsletter that I was doing early on in the project. That's going to include, tomorrow's will include more information about the vendor matrix, a link to this webinar, a link to the Goblin tools, and some information about that. So look for the newsletters to kick off again. Thank you so much, everybody, for your attention. And thanks, Alaina, again, for a great presentation. And we will talk to you all soon.
Thank you.
Oh,